Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Clayton and James Show, where we discuss some of the trending topics from the world of football, as well as a little bit of on this day nostalgia. My name's Clayton.
My name's James. People don't like it.
Really?
Yeah, they think it's shit. Yeah,
Oh, what's the
yeah.
alternative?
Well, something else.
Okay.
We don't know
What
yet,
do
do
you
we?
think? What do you think of it?
I think it was a better effort than this time last week, where I think you thought, "Oh, I've nailed it," and everyone was like, "What is he on?"
I don't think it's that bad. Do you know, should I reverse engineer where I got the inspiration from? I was just thinking,
I'm
so the
tempted
own
to say no.
okay, fair enough.
No, go on.
No, so I was thinking, what other show have you guys done where you don't do the normal intro? And the only one I could think of was Planet Sky FF. And I was like, that was literally, hello everybody and welcome to Planet Sky FF, where everything revolves around
Yeah,
50,000.
but what you've got to remember, this is really important, right? No one has high expectations on Suj. So I Suj at it
But why do people have high expectations of me?
because they do. They do.
Okay, all right.
This
Okay,
week on the Clayton and James show, we'll do a little brief wrap up of last night's stuff, which leads into a conversation about the game that should have happened last night that didn't happen last night. Clayton wants to do a little piece on Arsenal. We're going to talk about the impact of Rodri's injury. There's some good news finally for Everton fans. Our Euro club focus this week is on Qarabag, and I understand Clates has really researched them massively. Actually, just told me that I don't know anything about them. Actually, do you even know what country they're from?
I do with the Wikipedia page in front of me,
Oh my
Azerbaijan.
God. No, it looks like I'm doing Qarabag then, doesn't it? And then on this day at the end as well. And I'll start with a trivia question for you, which relates a little bit to that on this day, which is from 1993. Although the question is current, we'll do the answer towards the end. There are seven players currently playing in the Premier League who have scored 4 goals in a Premier League match. Only one of them did it for a club that he's not currently playing for. Don't want the answer now. Something for you to think about. We will start with a wrap up of last night's Carabao Cup matches. Did you watch any of them, Clates?
No, no, as you know, Tuesday nights are my salsa dancing night, so I missed it, but I did see Christopher Nkunku saving his hat trick for the EFL Cup, which I think Twitter was finding partly funny. But yeah, nice win for Chelsea, City through, Leicester to penalties, and Villa against Wickham. And I have to shout out one of my friends who is a Tottenham fan, and I think you played them in a cup once, and we were on pro clubs, and he's like, "We've drawn a team. I've never heard of them. They're called Wycombe." And yeah. So every time I see Wickham, I can't stop laughing.
With Combe. It reminds me of the old you remember Soccer AM? If they had like someone on from America or something and they didn't have a club to support, they'd put all the names in the hat and
Yeah.
pick one out. I can't remember the name of the fellow, but he picked it out and he went, Bournemouth.
Yeah, I
Um,
remember
yeah, that's the one. With Combe is good. I'd never heard that before. Yeah, and Kunku 6.1 with just a hat trick last night. Although the third goal was a bit of a car crash from the goalkeeper, it happens. Credit to Barrow for getting to this stage of the competition. Chelsea obviously changed the team massively. Wholesale changes. Malo Gusto back and obviously in contention for the weekend, one to keep an eye on. Full changes for Villa, except Amadou Onana played again, but then he only played the 45 minutes at the weekend, and then they don't play till Sunday. So large rotation for Villa. I think Bogard played centre back, and they played another young player who I was completely unfamiliar with at centre back, Sil Swinkles. Who apparently did all right. There was a start for Leon Bailey. And I see Emi Buendia score because obviously had terrible injury problems last season. No Kamara or Mings yet, though, for Villa. Leicester did go through on penalties with Danny Ward, yeah, FPL legend of He Passed, being the hero. Saved all 3 penalties after Leicester had failed to have a shot on target at League Two, but also in the first 80 minutes. I don't read too much into that because this time last week I watched my team get mullered essentially at Coventry, and I realised there's a difference between the Championship and League Two, but then we played very well on the Saturday afterwards. I don't suspect Leicester will play that well at Arsenal at the weekend. And there's already angst amongst the Leicester fans towards Steve Cooper. A lot of them are just not going to take to him.
I
And I
saw
think
quite a
that's
few.
something to keep in the back of your mind.
I did see a few Cooper out tweets last night on my timeline. So yeah, one to
Well,
keep an eye
supposedly
on.
there was one I've not seen it, but supposedly someone got on the pitch and tried to confront him as well.
No, wait. Oh, that's not good. Like, I don't
No, of
like that.
course it's
But
not. I mean, Aaron Lago spoke about it quite a bit on yesterday's Clash of Correspondence. Like, it's 5 games in, it's all right. We've drawn 3 and lost 2 from I guess, a toughish fixture schedule. We can't expect anything from Saturday's game. Season kind of starts from afterwards. Yes, not beating Everton, a little bit disappointed. I think the one thing I'd say on that with Leicester to add on, we spoke about it in the summer, is that it's such a shift from Maresca's style to this. Part of the point being, well, if it keeps Leicester up, then this year that's achieved the objective. But I think Leicester fans got used to watching one thing last year. Now they've gone up a division and they're watching something completely different. It does feel like it's something that it couldn't go on no more than sort of 18 months or so. That's how it feels to me. Like if he keeps them up, great. And then they'll get to start next season and be like, oh, we want to play a more expansive style again now. So I feel like it's got a short shelf life, that.
Yeah, agree with that.
City beat Watford 2-1. First Man City goal for Matthias Nunes. Jeremy Doku even scored. Nice goal, actually. He did start. He and Cole Walker started again. One big takeaway from last night being I reshared a tweet from Johnny Pringle. He said Rico Lewis was really good. And obviously with Rodri's injury, which we'll talk about in a sec, I don't know if it's going to mean more minutes for him or not, but he's a player that's going to be on the fringes of people's wildcard ideas, like I guess this week, whether they want to stick him in or not. I don't think any of us have got the true answers to that. Watford put up a decent showing, nice goal from Tom Ince. One game that was meant to happen last night that didn't was in South London. AFC Wimbledon were meant to host Newcastle United. That game was postponed because of flooding in the nearby River Wardle, which, to cut a long story short, flooded the stadium and left one corner of their football pitch looking more like a golf course with a bunker. I guess it's like a small version of a sinkhole was opened up on a football pitch. The game has been rearranged to next Tuesday night at St James's Park. I noticed in Wimbledon's statement yesterday, they thanked Newcastle for agreeing to the switch, which I know there was a few people like, it's not fair they're playing at Newcastle. It kind of feels like Wimbledon, rather than having to find their own stadium for the fixture, have said, can you host the game? And Newcastle have done that. I also know there was a GoFundMe started as well, and Newcastle donated £15,000 to help with the repairs of the stadium. So that's nice. It's an easy win for Newcastle, a football club who largely has bad publicity because of their ownership. It was an easy win to do some good things here, and they've done so. It can't be understated how much of an issue this is for Wimbledon, though. Have you seen the images? I know a lot of people have seen the images from the pitch. Have you seen any of the images from inside the stadium?
No, I've not seen it from inside the stadium, actually, to be
So it's
fair.
like the ground level is just completely flooded, mate.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, I think I've seen in our Patreon a couple of Wimbledon fans saying they're quite concerned about how it affects them longer term as well. So, what are some of the issues that will come out from this for them longer term?
Um, well, I know there's a lot of volunteer work to obviously help clear the stadium, but I saw some images yesterday from kind of like, it's obviously a small museum inside this stadium. It's flooded and stuff, mate. So, you walk into the main grounds of the stadium, it's flooded. It's flooded going out from like the tunnel to the pitch and stuff. So that causes a certain amount of obviously water damage that, just let it dry out. I don't think it quite works like that. So there's a lot of repair works needs to go on the stadium. Certain areas which are, and I don't, but I'm assuming here, probably concrete concourse levels are probably not too much of a problem, like, the rest of the stadium and stuff like that. But that main entrance, look, it's like it's carpet and stuff like that, right?
Is there a danger that some of their upcoming games could be
Yeah. So we're
in
meant
danger
to
as well?
play, irony as well. We're meant to have 3 home games this week. So they were meant to play, I think it's Crew next Tuesday. That's obviously been postponed to accommodate the rescheduling of the Newcastle match. And I think it might be Accrington Stanley. Who are they? They're meant to play at home this weekend. We don't know what's happening with that game yet. Clearly, it won't be at Wimbledon. So if it is played, it will be at an alternate venue. I suggest the most likely thing is it's postponed. It's all well and good. People say, just, play it down the road. There's loads of grounds in South London and stuff. It's not as easy as that. You've got to find one that's available. You need to all reorganize policing, stewarding, all these sort of things. You can't just put a football match, play it down the road. It doesn't work even at that level. It doesn't work quite like that. And obviously the requirements of the current home fans, need taking into account. I know there's a comedy night that was arranged at the stadium on Friday night. That's still going ahead. So that suggests some good news. But in terms of the pitch, obviously, as well, I mean, presumably it's not just a case of, flattening that out and relaying the pitch. You need to make sure that shit's not going to happen again, mate.
I've just seen
Effectively, a
the
hole was opened up in the football pitch.
Yeah, I've just Googled the images while you were talking, and yeah, it doesn't look good. More than 100,000 liters of water has been pumped out. That's bloody mind-blowing. On the kind of forgetting what the knock-on impact is, just in isolation, the fact that they'll miss out on gate receipts and all of the revenue that they would have had from the Newcastle game. With it being played in Newcastle next week now, is there a chance that they could end up with more money just by, like, I don't know how the gate receipt splits work if it's Newcastle that
Possibly,
host it.
yeah. I think it works differently in the League Cup to the FA Cup. In the FA Cup, I think you get quite a sizable amount of the gate, don't you? I think it's like three quarters of the gate for the
Yeah.
away team or something. That's not the case, I don't believe, in the Carabao Cup. But I imagine again, the difference for Newcastle here, and I realize Newcastle on the edge of PSR, so they're not just going to give away money, but there's definitely a good for Newcastle and their owners. Anything they can do that's a good news story about how lovely they are, they should just get on with and do it, shouldn't they?
Yeah.
So I imagine there'll be a little bit of a link built between the two clubs. Like I said, that donation we know was made by Newcastle United of £15,000 to help with the damages. I realise that that's not a lot of money to that football club, but you still did it. You don't have to, right?
Yeah, you don't have to. That's the key thing. So yeah, good on them.
Um, so what happens at times like this now is I think you do really get a rally round from the football community, but obviously clubs themselves, if Wimbledon went, hey, Charlton, can you lend us some money or something like Charlton have got their own problems. It's just a name I'm plucking out of thin air. So they'll be all right. They'll be all right. But the big problem will be how they how soon will it be before they can start playing there again? I don't think any of us know. It might be a couple of weeks, but it could be something that goes into next year. Then you've got to find you've got to find somewhere else to play your home games. That's easier said than done. And I'm sure as well, considering what that football club and its supporters have gone through, the last thing they want to do is go and play at Selhurst Park or something like that, right? Because that football club, where it was when it was obviously Wimbledon in the Premier League, was homeless for like 12 odd years, right? It's just got back to its home of Plough Lane in the last few years. I'm sure they don't want to ground share for any time at all if they can help it. It's obviously it's a fan-led football club. So you certainly know from that perspective, the supporters are going to do whatever they can to move this forward as quickly as possible.
I've been to
So
Plough Lane before. It's a cool stadium, like you say, fan-led club, like nice community vibe when I was there. Yeah, I really liked it. So yeah,
I've
fingers crossed it's
never
not
been.
too
I've
long.
watched Tottenham plenty of times at Selhurst Park against Wimbledon. My dad went to the old Plough Lane. He would not speak kindly of it. And I don't think many away teams spoke kindly of it when they went there and often got beat under, the crazy gang regime and stuff like that. But that's why they ended up ground sharing, right? Because the stadium was shite, essentially. It's a modern, suitable ground for League One, League Two level. So wish them well in any case. You understand, Clates, want to do a little piece on Arsenal.
Yeah, just I've been getting quite a lot of questions around. I think a lot of people are on wild card, double defense versus double attack, and the knock-on impact of no Odegaard. I think a lot of people are looking at Havertz, slightly put off. So I thought, let me just do like a 5, 10 minute max brain dump. I'll try keep it short.
Can we do less?
Okay, 7. Uh, where do I start? So
I
I
meant
think
less than five.
all right, let's try. Let's hit the timer. I wouldn't read too much into the Spurs and City games without Odegaard. I think they're very unique opposition where Arsenal didn't have the ball as much. Obviously, the second half against Man City largely skewed by the game state. I think you'll see a very different approach in the upcoming weeks. It's the likes of Leicester, Southampton, Bournemouth before the tough run then flips again. In that run of 3 games, I think Arsenal will have a lot more of the ball than we've seen in the last week. And I've described Odegaard as bringing 3 different attributes to the Arsenal team. One is pressing from the front. The second is the obvious chance creation, his ability to connect in the final third and really sustain pressure. And the third is his ability to drop deep and get involved in build up. I think you can replace 1 and 3 quite easily. I think Arsenal off the ball are fine without him as much as he is the instigator of the press. I think just tactically, everyone in that squad is so well drilled, so I'm not concerned about that. The third one, I think you can get around that by playing likes of Zinchenko, Jorginho, more ball progressors who are comfortable in the first phase, like high volume passes of the ball that can replace that. Zinchenko is out for a few weeks, so I think you might see Jorginho. The one that I don't think you can replace, and not to go full Pep, but we cannot replace, is you can't go and get that like for like in terms of chance creation and everything. And I think there's two solutions to this. One is you go and play the most similar on the ball profile, which happens to be a 17-year-old Ethan Nwaneri. We play in the EFL Cup against Bolton tonight, so let's see how he gets on. I'd be surprised if Arteta actually plays him, if I'm being honest. The second is I think you tweak the system, and I've said this before, Man City, like we'll touch on Rodri in a second, like they manage their imperfections perfectly. You don't have a backup for Rodri, you don't have a backup for De Bruyne, that you tweak things and approach the games differently. And I think what Arsenal will look to do is against Everton on the final day of the season, we were really struggling to break them down. And let's get nerdy, James. Arsenal typically build up in a 3-2, as we know. In that game, Arsenal tweaked it and went to a 2-3, and it was the two centre backs. And at one point, I can't remember who the six was in that game, but it was Timber, the six, and Zinchenko. And I think that's something we'll see
Must have been
more.
Thomas Partey.
Probably. I
He
just,
played all the games at the end of the season, didn't he?
yeah, I've got a mind blank in that little section. But
I
yeah.
was in Sheffield and drunk, so it's no point asking me.
Um, it was my birthday, so I was drunk. But
You're
yeah,
always drunk.
I think we'll see Arsenal build up in a more fluid, like there'll be three twos in there, but I think a 2-3 primarily. And what that does is Ben White, I know he missed out on Sunday because he has a knock, and we'll keep an eye on that, but he has played so much football for Arsenal in the last 2, 3 years, and he's constantly played through injuries because we've not had adequate replacements for him. I think now it's partly that, but also the evolution of Arsenal. There always is something that comes in each season that none of us have seen. And I've been quite confident for a while that I genuinely think Timber Calafiori is what Arteta will go with as the fullbacks. And what I think the 2-3 does there is you've got Saliba Gabriel as your two. Calafiori is quite a weird player. And like I did a lot of research on him before we signed him. So it's not just based on the City game, but positionally, he's very fluid. Like, he's very unusual. He's a bit chaotic, and I think in the absence of a Zinchenko and the knock-on impact of no Odegaard, if you have him in the team, it's the ability to carry and drive through the lines. And I think against deep blocks, that is another way to disrupt them rather than constantly manipulating the ball and stuff. You carry through, attract someone else, draw someone else out of position. On the flip side, you've got Timber. If he plays a line higher, which we saw against Everton, Ben White, when he inverts, which is very rare, he is more of like a off the ball decoy, in my opinion. I think he's there to move people around. We don't progress the ball through him. Timber is very comfortable on the ball and very press resistant. He's got that kind of shoulder drop, the ability to go both feet. And I think we'll play Timber a line higher and almost play him in the half space where Odegaard usually is. We won't use him as the playmaker, but it's more shift the line higher, push the opposition back a little bit deeper. And then we talk about the kind of 5 and 5 in defense and attack. I think that's what the structure will look like in defense. And then the attack is hopefully a line higher. And you'll see as
You're
a
talking
result.
about Timber going into the front five here. Is that what
No,
you're
no,
saying?
no. As part of the back five, just playing a line higher in terms of that 2-3. So the two being
Okay, so you're talking
Salib.
about Timber and Calafiori either side of a party or a Jorginho, whoever plays that position. Yeah, I
Correct.
understand what you're
Yeah.
saying. Um, sounds like a less hyper version of Tottenham.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's what we did against Everton, and I think that's what we'll see. And then the knock-on impact, a lot of people are kind of put off Havertz. I'll be lying if I said it's not a slight negative, no Odegaard in these games, because I think as much as I think we'll see a slight tweak in identity from Arsenal where it's a little bit more direct and efficient, I think we'll lose the ability to really sustain that pressure in the final third, where if we lose the ball, Odegaard just makes it stick and we're kind of consistently camped in that final third. I do think there'll be, as a result, some periods of the game where teams are able to get into our half a little bit more. But Havertz, whether he's playing as right eight, if you want to call it, a centre forward, he will still consistently get into the right areas to have high quality chances, in my opinion. We saw last season there was a game where Odegaard didn't play and Trossard was like the false nine. Havertz played right eight, but they were so fluid in their movement. It was constantly interchanging. So the too long didn't listen is off the ball. I don't think it will have an impact on Arsenal defensive assets. On the ball, I still think as much as Odegaard will be a slight miss, Arsenal will still create a high volume of chances. And whether Havertz is an out and out number nine or a right-sided eight, the relationship with the centre forward will be so fluid that he's already arriving into central forward positions to get good opportunities.
Okay, couple of questions. Obviously, you play Bolton tonight in the cup. There'll obviously be a lot of rotation. That's fairly clear. Arteta did kind of hint at the idea yesterday that someone might have a serious problem. Are we aware of who that might be?
No, that nothing credible. There's rumors that it might be Calafiori, but again, I haven't seen anything credible, so I'd
Well,
rather
that's
wait.
just ruined the last 5 minutes of this show, isn't it?
I know. So if that's the case, it will be Timber left back, White right back, obviously. But yeah, I think it's a case of just wait and see. Like as much as there will be rotation, Arsenal have quite a few fringe players that are out in the likes of Tomiyasu, Zinchenko, so there will be first teamers in the squad. So I think we'll find out tonight who that player is.
So on rotation, these Leicester and Southampton home games, which are obviously extremely attractive from a fantasy perspective, the PSG game is sandwiched in the middle of there. So, I mean, how many of your players can we expect to play all three of those games? They are all at home, including the PSG game.
Uh, I will change the question to how many will start all three games, and
Yeah, okay,
I would
better.
say with confidence a good eight of them. The three being I reckon there's a chance Jorginho comes in for a party or something, like not a fantasy football related one. I think
I guess there's a
Leicester.
few interested in Martinelli or Trossard.
I just wouldn't go near it from the perspective of I even those games, Leicester and Southampton, I actually think that suits a Sterling profile left wing, just the ability to kind of stop start in 5 seconds, accelerate in short distances. But I think Martinelli's confidence isn't great right now. I think he did well on Sunday against Man City. Will he be rewarded as a result? I just think there's too many options in that area that I wouldn't. I feel like it's a transfer waiting to happen, which I think you
Yeah,
said as well.
Sterling's also is a bit of an unknown at the moment, isn't it? Where you want to use him. We haven't. I mean, how long did he play in the derby? 5 minutes, 10 minutes,
Yeah,
and he
if
was
that.
very deep at that point. There's nothing we can learn from that. I think to how Arteta would maybe want to use him in Leicester, Southampton, and fixtures like that coming up. So yeah, I think you probably still want to stick to your main players, your trusties. I get what you're saying. You have it, Shisaku's, Saliba's, Gabriel's, Raya if he's fit, should probably start the three games. So if you're on wild card, which I'm assuming you're not,
I'm not, no.
okay, which three Arsenal for you?
So I do think it's personal preference on play style. Me personally, I would be going double attack with a view to attacking these three games and then switching to double defense long term if people are able to plan that in. Long term, I think the play is absolutely double defense, but I think there are huge gains to be had in this 3 game period coming up with double attack.
Okay, is that influenced by the time when you went treble defense and then you started winning every game 5-6-0?
Not at all, but yeah, I've seen a few treble defenses flying around.
I
Welcome
don't
to the
mind it
club.
at all if
I don't
that's what
mind it,
people
no.
want to do. And would you captain Saka this week?
If he is not the one that's injured, yeah, I think I would, I mean, Haaland away at Newcastle isn't as frightening as I think I thought it would have been last season, in the sense of like, I'm not as worried about Newcastle defensively as I used to be, but I do think Arsenal could do very well against Leicester and Saka will be central to it. So I personally right now have him bust with Haaland vice.
Okay. And there's your segue into Manchester City. Because I think I covered this briefly on Clash of Correspondence, but you could really flip your narrative on this however you want. Oh, Newcastle have had good results, but they haven't played very well. Haaland looks unstoppable at the moment. Yeah, but what about without Rodri? I think the statistic is this is the big one. Since Rodri joined the football club, their win percentage in the Premier League when he starts is 74%. Without him, it is 62%. If they only win 62% of football matches for the rest of this season, I'm pretty confident they will not win the Premier League. Um, this is fairly seismic, isn't it? What we know so far is he's had tests in Manchester, which we believe show a likely damage to the anterior cruciate ligament ACL. He's gone for basically, I guess, a second opinion from a specialist or an expert, even maybe Clayton, in Madrid. That's the kind of expert that yeah, there we go. That's what I believe an expert is. Um, but it does look like it probably is going to be season ending, or at least sort of 6 months or so, which that's going to take us to March. That's your best case scenario. I think it's 6 months or so. What does City do here, Clates?
Well, I think we've seen it so far this season, right? I assume what they did at the start of the season without him. I think I don't know if that was in mind of thinking, oh yeah, it's only a few weeks. Like it's a bit different now where it's potentially the rest of the season. I do think my immediate instinct is Rico Lewis just immediately comes to mind in terms of playtime and his ability to invert into central areas and assist there. Yeah, I think it's a combination of what they've done already, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't think any of us know. I think I've seen people already make the link that, oh, Rico Lewis played and then Rodri was back and Lewis was out the team. And I think it's too small a sample to come to that conclusion that that's definitively what it will be. Although it is worth noting that Cole Walker played again. I know, realised Walker and Lewis both played last night. The fact that Walker played again last night after Sunday, I think is quite interesting. That might be the one that gives us the inkling that, yeah, maybe it is going to be Lewis from right back moving forward. The biggest thing for City here is bottom line is two big problems here. One, it doesn't make him as threatening with the ball. Despite how incredible he is as a holding midfield player, he is creative and he scores big goals, right? We clutch Rodri, essentially what we call him, quite a lot. You're going to lose that from the team. And I think his game intelligence off the ball is the best with and without the ball. You are losing a legitimate world class player, and I don't think anybody is in question of that. So yeah, you just run with Kovacic. Obviously, the squad profile has changed a little bit in the sense that Gundogan has come back in. I've seen a few City fans already said just play Gundogan in that deeper role. I think in terms of in possession, I think that's fine. But I think you're losing the capability of what you probably want Gundogan to be, which is a bit of a box crasher. And really, other than Haaland, no one's actually scoring for Manchester City at the moment. I also would have questions about him playing a single pivot off the ball. And the more I think about the profile of, you can't replace Rodri. You could go with two players in there and go more of a 4-2-3-1, and you can still play as wide wingers, and that gives a little bit more protection. But the more I think about it, and the more I think about, well, who's the closest profile player in that squad to Rodri? I think it's probably John Stones.
You think they'll go back to what they did previously with him then?
So there's a case to say it could be, yeah, Kovacic is like a single pivot and John Stones moves in alongside him. Or I wonder if John Stones just starts playing that role.
Yeah, possibly. They've got a good defensive depth, so yeah.
He's obviously got defensive intelligence, which is quite important. He doesn't have the range of passing as Rodri, but I think he's very comfortable. I think of a six receiving the ball back to goal, and I almost feel like, yeah, I'd be quite comfortable with that being John Stones. So yeah, you don't get the range of passing and stuff, but he obviously knows how to join in offensively from a deeper position as well. I wonder if we might see that. None of us know the answer, but I think that might be what he ends up going with.
It's interesting because just while you were talking, I was looking, and when I said I think they'll just do what they've done so far without Rodri, they did have Kovacic and Lewis playing for every single game while Rodri was out. But then I don't think John Stones was available, was he?
No, exactly. So that's what I'm saying. You create one narrative, but okay, John Stones, and also Cole Walker wasn't really either. So you can put your narratives out, and it might be that it's Kovacic and Lewis is going to go into kind of almost Pedro Porro positions and stuff like that again. Yeah, possibly. City might go and buy in January,
Yeah,
but
I think they will.
there's 2.5 months to get there, and a lot of football to be played. Um, I think City are quite fortunate in the immediate that the fixture list is quite nice, and I think it gives them an opportunity to build into what maybe they want to do. Then there are some tougher challenges once you get in sort of late October, early November, but the immediate fixtures coming up look winnable. That said, Saturday's a challenge. And if you go to Newcastle and you don't turn up, in the right mindset, you can go under in the atmosphere there. And I think Newcastle possibly need to be thought of differently as a home and away team at the moment because it's one of the best atmospheres in the country. And I'm sure the Toon Army will be very up for it on Saturday and thinking, oh, despite our bad performance Saturday, we've got an opportunity here.
It's a really good point on that because as much as I say I don't think Newcastle are the same as I used to think of them last season, what you say there about depending on how you arrive and your mindset and their crowd, like that can quickly eat another team up. And what I always say about Man City is, in my opinion, like one of the best teams I've ever seen, their weakness is, in my opinion, the ability to play through them and run directly. I think without Rodri, that just gets heightened. So a place like St. James's Park, if they're up for it, that could get quite dangerous.
Following week, Newcastle go to Everton. I was having a chat with some of our patrons yesterday about that being 5:30 kickoff and a positive mindset maybe being different for Everton in that particular fixture because they've had what I believe is very good news over the last couple of days. The Friedkin group have now basically completed an agreement to purchase Everton Football Club for basically around about 400, somewhere between 400 and 500 million pounds. That is like a majority takeover. It's not like Sir Jim Ratcliffe's minority into Manchester United. It's a majority takeover. And I think most importantly for Everton, gives them stability moving forward, where I wasn't as against John Textor, who's obviously part owner of Crystal Palace, getting involved because I thought it was a better idea than some of the others getting mentioned. Because I think like if 7-7 Partners had got hold of that football club, I think it was in a trouble beyond anything you and I can understand in terms of how it would have been used. So the Freaking Group obviously own Roma as well, so we've got experience of owning a big football club. I think longer term, there is a case to think, will Everton be part of a feeder club system for Roma? And then I sat back and thought about that, and I thought actually it's probably more bad news for Roma because of the sheer wealth of the Premier League,
I was just gonna
basically.
say, yeah, I could see it being the
Yeah,
other way around,
they actually
really.
put out a statement to Roma supporters either yesterday or the day before saying, calm, it's part of our model. We're still very serious about you, etc. I did think that, yeah, imagine that. You might end up in a position 10, 15 years from now where Roma are like under Everton in a club model. That won't go down well. Interestingly, they did pull out of talks months ago. They also did the same before they purchased Roma as well. And the talks moved very fast over the weekend once the Freaking Group went back on the table to Everton. The most important thing here is that these guys will secure the future of the football club. I think that's the biggest thing. They've already put money into the football club. So part of what was putting people off in terms of investing was they and the 7-7 Partners charlatan group basically had also put money into the football club. But anybody else was coming in was going to have to pay off loans to these two groups. The Freaking Group obviously don't have to pay off to themselves. They just need to deal with the 777 factor of things. Everton is going to progress as a football club in the next decade or so. Moving into Bramley Moore Dock and the new stadium at the end of this season is going to be a game changer for them moving forward. We're not talking about overnight, are they going to challenge for top four next year? I spoke about this years ago. Everton have got 5 years of pain. We've got a couple of years to go. This is the first bit of serious good news for them for a while, I think. And it's not done yet, but it should be. We expect the takeover to be fully ratified and completed, i.e., they own the football club completely and signed off by the Premier League before Christmas as it stands. It's still a process that has a way to go, but you imagine in terms of, their owners and directors tests and stuff like that, they own Roma, right? They're fine. They'll pass all of that. That won't be a problem. Whereas that the 777 group were just never going to get beyond that base as far as I was concerned, unless the Premier League were drunk. But then, ask Leicester fans if the Premier League are drunk, and they'll tell you, yeah, well, actually, yeah, sometimes when they write their own rules.
Have we
So it's
heard
good
anything
news.
from the Friedkin group? Like you speak about a period of stability and long term it being a positive for Everton. Have we heard anything from the group in terms of what their ambitions or plans are in the
Yeah,
short,
they've not
medium, and
come
long
out
term?
and made anything like outlandish. They've said, custodians of this football club who want to improve and restore it to where it should be. And Everton is a massive football club. I
Huge.
can't make that clearer to people. It is a big, big football club with big potential. And Suj and I have done, I think, 3 or 4 podcasts on Everton on Money in Football and Patreon over the last few years, saying, you pick it up at the right time, you'll take this forward because everything's there. The loyal fan base won't ever go away for Everton, no matter how much Liverpool in the shadow and all that. As a loyal fan base that will stick with the football club there, and it's exciting times with the new stadium. I know leaving Goodison will be, your torn heart. I went through that with White Hart Lane, but yeah, it's hopefully it's the start of something for Everton. In the immediate, it should lift the mood and the morale around the football club that there's some clarity. That's really important because I think Everton fans have been nervous about this. The word administration has even been mentioned in the same breath of them over the last few months. You should wipe out any concern of that sort of thing. He gets Mashiri out of the football club, which nearly all Everton fans want
I think
because,
it's always a positive just for that alone, isn't it?
yeah, it should just make for a more positive vibe around Everton. Now they're coming into good fixtures as well, as we've really identified. Couple that with a set of fan base that can now see a future. You might find that Everton go on a run. That said, the manager's in trouble, but I don't think the manager's in trouble in the immediate. I don't think the manager's in the immediate because I think, well, this is an interesting aspect to this. There's a lot of Everton fans would want change with Dyche, and there's a mix here, right? I think most recognise that probably under Sean Dyche, they probably will stay up, but it's also not what they want to watch. It's also a little bit like the Cooper thing. It feels with Leicester. It's not going to be the long term solution for what that football club wants to be in the long term. But I do think Sean Dyche is probably the right fit for this moment at Everton. What I was thinking about is, what if Everton lose at home to Palace, lose at home to Newcastle, lose their next game afterwards? There'll be a call for him to get sacked under that circumstance.
Well,
Definitely.
their new owners have just sacked De Rossi 5 games into the season, so
Yeah, this is why I said Dyche in trouble. But until it's ratified, who would make the decision?
true. Yeah, very true. Yeah, I don't know.
Would they jump the gun and be that confident to say to Mashiri, right, bin him and put this guy in charge? So there's an interesting spin off if results go badly for Everton in the next few weeks. But I think it's probably clear that Sean Dyche isn't going to be Everton manager in 4 years. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
They will want to do their thing. And yes, Daniele De Rossi, we mentioned him on this podcast a couple of weeks ago because he'd been sacked one morning just before we was about to pod. And we went, that seems a bit harsh. Okay, 3 points from the first 4 games. But I think it was 3 draws away from home. They'd had a bad result at home. They'd had distractions last year where they got to the semi-finals in Europa League before losing to Bayer Leverkusen. Fair enough. It seemed a little bit harsh, like he'd not been given much time. So, yeah, they probably won't be hesitant to change and get their own person in charge of the football club.
No, one thing you said as well earlier, I agree. I just Everton, like I've always had a soft spot for them. I just think of them as like a very traditional football club, and
I do as well. I've said this a lot. I look at them sometimes. I think that easy could have been my club. The Arsenal down the road. If the investment hadn't been, we kind of hit in at the right time to stay as part of a six. I wouldn't say, if you looked at Tottenham versus Everton now, say who's a bigger football club, we'd probably say Tottenham with the new stadium, etc. Go back to like the late 80s and stuff, and the traditional big five was Tottenham and Everton were in there with Arsenal, Liverpool, and Manchester United. This is a big football club.
yeah, and so I've never
And
really
they've
wanted
largely
them.
suffered. And they're
Yeah,
good people up there.
I know I shouldn't have biases, but yeah, I don't like the idea of them getting relegated. But they are 19th. I get it, it's 5 games in, and I agree with you. I think under Deitch, I'd be. I don't think they will get relegated, but it's a possibility. What impact do you think that would have in terms of the new ownership and the longevity of their
Well,
plans
if they go
if they were
down,
to go down there?
crap. Some way to move into that bright new stadium, which does look great, by the way. I think it'd be okay. I think Everton have been in position over the last few years that they probably could ill afford to go down. I don't think that this is one, it could be wrong, but I don't think this is one where if they did go down now under this ownership, that they wouldn't be in a very strong position and expect them to come back very quickly. But I think they would. So I think it would, I guess you're leading there to, well, could it be like Leeds and it's out for 20 years and stuff like that? Probably not.
No, I think that's my instinct as well. I think if they were to go down, obviously it's yeah, not great to state the obvious, but yeah, I think they'd be fine. Just that level of stability is the key word I took from everything you said there, to be honest.
I mentioned Roma. losing to Bayer Leverkusen in Europa League last season. They weren't the only team that did. I mean, there was a number of teams that did. Obviously, they got to the final, but one of them was Qarabag, and they came as
What a
close to.
segue.
They came, I'm getting good at this, aren't I? They came as close to anybody as beating them. In fact, they were leading going into injury time. In I think the last 16, which was the first time an Azerbaijani team I think got to the last 16 of a European competition. But Clayton, this is your gig, so you're going to tell us all about Carrier Bag Shop, aren't you?
Of course. So
And
they
also, you
make
can buy your paper bags at carrierbagshop.co.uk. There's a plug for Sudge's business. All right, boss. Pay rise. Cheers.
yeah, they're a Planet FPL patron. We've got a fan club of Qarabag, don't we? I'd say they're all our adopted second teams. Whenever we see them in Europe, we always pay attention. No,
Do we? What? Because it's Carrier Bag Shop.
yeah, I feel
Me and
like
Sudge had a conversation a couple of weeks ago about sponsoring them, and I was like, I think they've got more money than you think, mate.
yeah, definitely. But yeah, I haven't done my research on these. I've got the Wikipedia page in front of me, so I don't know if you actually
So
want to take it away.
yeah, I'll give you some little bits. So they've obviously dominated in Azerbaijan for some time. It's 10 of the last 11 league titles won. But it actually only been Qarabag has formed now, I believe, since 1987. There was a version of the club formed in the 1950s that changed a couple of times. And they actually moved from their region in 1993 after the Agdam region was seized by Armenian armed forces in 1993, and they'd won the league. I think that year, that in May or whatever, and became the first side outside of Baku to win the Azerbaijani Premier League. And you think, wow, that's a really big deal. And you see that only been going for a couple of years, but like, well done. So they're not actually from the region of Baku. They're originally from Agdam. And interestingly, I found out that a lot of the people outside of Baku support Qarabag because they feel like they're representative of the rest of outside of the major city, basically, representative of the other country. I guess not the same, but Nico would probably tell you this. You go to Lisbon, go to Portugal, and so many people support Benfica, like around Portugal. It's a little bit like that. So they have large support in Azerbaijan, yet play in Baku, their actual stadium is like holds 5,500.
Oh wow. Are
That's
they
it
the main dominant team in
by a
Azerbaijan?
long way. Yeah. So
Interesting that they're not from Baku though, and
the
they're
other
not as
team
dominant. Yeah.
name that you might have seen in Europe over the last few years is, I think it's NK Sefchi. Karabag played them at the weekend and beat them 4-0. So they've been dominant in that league for a long time. It's 10 of the last 11 titles. One, there's a name that's become familiar with us, regularly being in European competition over the last few years. And obviously have improved quite a lot. Like genuinely, they very nearly beat Bayer Leverkusen last year, nearly became the first team last season to do so. They drew 2-2 at home and then were 2-0 up at home away in the second leg, despite already being down to 10 men. A couple of late goals from Patrick Schick in injury time turned it and knocked Qarabag out. And I mean, that's mighty impressive. So you could look at that, and obviously Qarabag we're talking about now because they're playing my team on Thursday. You can look at that and go, that's going to present a challenge. Or you could look at the qualifying for the Champions League this year and see that they lost 5-0 to Dynamo Zagreb on aggregate, home and away, over the two legs. And they obviously just conceded 9 in Munich. So what Qarabag I'm going to get on Thursday, difficult to say. It's worth saying though, in those two legs that they lost against Zagreb, which they lost 5-0 in aggregate, they had 8 big chances
Oh wow.
across the two games. So possibly a quite a harsh reflect. I mean, 8 big chances you've not scored
I might
across
watch
two
them.
games.
They sound like an interesting team. They have played in the Champions League before, I'm sure.
They are quite an interest. Oh yeah, that they have. Yeah. Their manager's Gerben Gerbenov. He's been in charge since 2008. He's still in charge. Considered pretty much one of the best managers in Azerbaijani history because obviously his achievements of getting Qarabag regularly playing in European competition. And he's very much, a traditional modern style of if I say to you football in 2008, what do you think of?
I've got PTSD as an Arsenal fan that was in a very tricky period in 2008. What
Okay.
else should I be thinking of?
World football 2008. What are you thinking?
I don't know. What am I thinking in
I'm thinking
2008?
Spain. I think Spain. I
Oh,
think
that
Barcelona. I'm thinking
dominant. Yeah.
keep ball, tiki takas. Well, that's what he is stylistically.
Okay.
His team looks like they largely play 4-2-3-1. So that's if people do want to watch the game Thursday night. I don't know why anyone wants to watch Thursday night unless their team is playing in the competition. But if you do want to watch it, you probably expect 4-2-3-1. And I think we can expect a side that's probably quite brave on the ball, actually, but might also have vulnerability. So whether we get the team that really, really nearly beat Leverkusen last year, or the team that lost 5-0 over 2 games to a team that just conceded 9 in the Champions League, I'm not sure. But
No,
they've
I'm gonna
become
tune into that.
they've almost become a little bit of I don't say household name, but they have become a club. I think there's a few clubs like them who 15 years ago we'd never heard of. And now most people who are tuned into European football are, yeah, I know them. Yeah. And most people could say, yeah, they're always the team from Azerbaijan. When they play in Europe, they obviously don't play in this 5,000 seat stadium. They use one or two other stadiums. There's a stadium that holds 25,000, or obviously they can play in the big stadium in Baku, which held games at the Euros. Obviously had the Europa League final between yourselves and Chelsea in 2019. I think they judged that dependent on the opponent. Have played English clubs before in Europe, Clates. They've played Tottenham, they've played Arsenal, and they've played Chelsea, the three London clubs. There are other clubs in London for anyone who wants to write in or put comments in YouTube, I'm aware. Um, Results in those 6 games, Clates?
I think we beat them.
What
Oh,
do you
did we
think?
lose?
It's your club. Yeah.
I can't remember it, to be honest. I remember playing them, but I can't remember the result.
They are played 6, lost 6 in European competition. I think the Chelsea defeats were in the Champions League against your team and my team, Europa League, and it's almost a little bit full circle as well for Heung-min Son because his first goals for Tottenham were against Qarabag
No way.
9 years ago. I think I've got that right. So you'll probably hear lots of Heung-min Son stories over the next 24 hours or so in the build up to the game. And I think it was his home debut as well. He scored twice. And we won 3-1. We won 1-0 away against them. Harry Kane scored the only goal. That was the season that we put the pressure on Leicester, Clates,
Your memory
if you were
blows my
wondering.
mind. I don't know how you remember stuff like that. But no, from what you've
I've got it
described
written
them,
down in front of me. No, I don't. I've got the Carabao Wikipedia page open. I ain't got the Tottenham shit written
from
down.
what you describe of them, though, I think that'll be a good game on Thursday. Yeah, if I'm free, I'm gonna watch that.
Yeah, I don't know. It might be one of them we score early and you win 3-4-0 and it becomes comfortable, but it might not. It might not. And it is one of them I think you go to as a fan. You're like, oh, it's Carabag. Oh, Carabag sharp giggles. Yeah, they might come and turn us over, mate.
I did stick it on last year in that Leverkusen game because of the
Yeah, I watched
situation
the
and
end of it
stuff.
as well.
Yeah, so yeah, I don't think there's many people that will be listening to this that haven't heard of Qarabag.
But have you heard of Carabag shop?
There we go. Go buy your bags, people.
Go buy your paper bags, www.carrybagshop.co.uk. Is this sponsor jam? No, it's such a company. Right, we're plugging it. Finally, on this day,
Hit me.
have you worked out the trivia question answer?
Oh shit, I forgot what the question
So the
was.
question was, there are 7 players currently playing in the Premier League who have scored 4 goals in a Premier League match. One of them isn't playing for the same club that he scored the 4 goal haul with.
We literally did a quiz yesterday and I flunked it. I'm not very good at this stuff, so no, I've got a blank.
Okay, you're useless. I will tell you the players who are current Premier League players who scored 4 goals in a match for the club they're playing for. Erling Haaland, obviously against Wolves, end of last season. Cole Palmer against Everton towards the end of last season. Kevin De Bruyne, Andy Martin's triple captaincy from a couple of years ago in the
Never
double game
forget.
week. Heung-min Son, the 4 assists from Harry Kane at Southampton in the COVID season. Also in the COVID period, Mikel Antonio at Norwich.
Ah, Mr. Tired.
Mr. Yet when Sush said he was tired and he scored 4, that's right. And Mohamed Salah, I think people remember from the blank game week in 2018, his first season with Liverpool, when he scored 4 and also got an assist in a victory against Watford in the end of March, where bizarrely it was snowing as well. That give you time to guess the answer?
No, mate.
He's an Arsenal player.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
There you go, mate. You just said it.
Oh, Gabriel Jesus.
Gabriel Jesus.
Was that against Watford?
It was against Watford as well. Yeah. where probably in my only time since I've known him, I DM'd Johnny Pringle in the build up to the game
I
and
remember
asked
this.
him what he thought as Jesus as a 1 week punt. Because I think we was all wild carding afterwards ahead of a bench boost and stuff, and he was like, "Oh, don't know, Jim." And I was going to Brentford that day because we were the 5:30 kickoff, and Johnny's DMing me during the game. He's like, "I'm so sorry, mate." Like, just like every 5 minutes, Jesus, bang, bang, bang. I think he got a hat trick within about 20 minutes. I was like, "What? Are you kidding me? No way." The only time I'd ever asked him for a bit of help, and he was like, "No, sorry, mate." Love you, Johnny. Cheers, mate. The on this day obviously relates to a 4 goal haul. Actually, the first ever scored in the Premier League from 1993. Any guesses?
1993. I'm gonna go for a very lazy Man United player.
No,
Blackburn,
no,
Newcastle.
no.
Never
You,
mind.
you,
You
you'd be
tell me.
here a while, weren't you?
Yeah.
Um, it was an African player.
Can I have one more clue?
It was a Nigerian. Do you want another clue?
That's way before Carnu, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Efan Ekoko scored 4 goals for Norwich in a 5-1 victory at Everton on this day in 1993. Here's something funny for you because I realised Everton fans have had too much good news, so I thought I'd drag them back down and remind them of a terrible defeat from over 30 years ago. Everton had won 5 of their first 8 games of this season. And actually, after going 1-0 up in this game, were reportedly singing from those who may have been in attendance that they were going to win the league.
Oh, go on. Where did they finish that season?
Uh, they ended up staying up on the last day of the season.
Jesus.
They lost 5-1. It went ahead fairly early on to a goal from Paul Rideout. Ikoko equalised with only a couple of minutes of the first half to go. If you ever see it, they used to have this really shit end, not the Gladys end, the opposite. I always forget what it's called. Sorry, Evertonians. But it was like a really shit lower tier, and it was like a back area that just went up. It was like a wall, and it was really strange. And then there was a top tier like above it, a really odd stand, which obviously went. I think they knocked it down that year actually from memory. Ikoko scores this brilliant goal, gets put through on the angle, buries it bottom corner. You can see this massive clock. The scoreboard was massive because they had the space to have a massive scoreboard. You could see how many minutes of the half were to go. Second half starts, and he scores a nice headed goal, leaves Neville Southall rooted in goal, assisted by little dinked cross from Chris Sutton. Then they broke away minutes later. Real Fox goes 1-on-1. Absolutely should pass the ball to Ikoko and give him an empty goal. Southall saves the shot from Fox, and Ikoko follows up. Takes about 10 touches before rolling it in. Then he gets sent through again another few minutes later against what looks like a very unusual high line from Everton in the early 90s. Were they ahead of their time? No, I don't think so. I think they were just mentally gone here. Ikoko rounds Southall and scores the fourth. Sutton himself would add a fifth with 15 minutes to go. Cue mass exodus from the Gladys Street end, who did think they were winning the league an hour earlier, but now we're losing 5-1 at home to Norwich. But we should remember at this time that Norwich City were excellent the year before, and they themselves were genuinely in the title race as late as April in the inaugural season of the Premier League, ultimately finishing third behind Manchester United and Aston Villa. They finished third with a -1 goal difference, Clayton.
No way. Where did they finish the following season when they won 5-1?
Much lower.
Right.
The story continues. So they finished third the year before on a -1 goal difference because they took some absolute shellackings away from home, including 5-1 at my place, White Hart Lane, on Good Friday. 7-1 at Blackburn. I think they lost 4-1 at Liverpool. They took some hidings on the road, but basically beat everybody that was crap and got themselves in contention. And it did play some good football that season. That year, around the time that they went to Everton and won 5-1, was the famous games with Bayern Munich. People remember the Jeremy Goss goal when Norwich City won in the Olympiastadion in Munich against the great Bayern Munich. And he knocked Bayern Munich out of what at the time was UEFA Cup. It's obviously now the Europa League. Before
That's
going out
unreal.
to before going out to Inter Milan who I think inspired by Dennis Bergkamp, actually, Clayton, in the next round. So Norwich City in Europe, and they got to play Bayern Munich and Inter in the UEFA Cup.
I didn't know that.
How lucky were you?
That is so cool.
And
Yeah,
they
I didn't know
beat
that.
Bayern Munich. It was famous. And Jeremy Goss at the time was also having this kind of goal of the month, goal of the season competition. You could have put a reel of his goals. They all seemed to be volleys, all of them. He had about 3 or 4 goal of the season contenders with volleys, including that one in Munich.
That Akoko, have I pronounced that
Definitely
correctly?
Coco, yeah.
Was he like a really well-known player that had a good reputation, or was that like a one-off thing
So
where he?
at the end of this season, Norwich sold their star forward for a British transfer record 5 million to Blackburn Rovers. It wasn't Ikoko, it was Chris Sutton.
Ah,
Sutton's essentially ended up the season scoring basically double Ikoko's goal. It was good forward. It's good forward. It's a great forward. I kind of remember him more playing for Wimbledon actually than Norwich. I think he went to Wimbledon either the next season or the season after. But not only was this kind of famous because the 4 goal haul for Norwich and the 5 goal haul for Norwich and Ekoko's 4 goals at Goodison Park, people realised that the seismic thing looking back to the game was because Norwich's manager would become Everton's next manager. Mike Walker, father of former Tottenham and England goalkeeper Ian Walker, had obviously done really well with Norwich, taking him into Europe incredibly. Everton sacked Howard Kendall, legendary Howard Kendall, who'd won the title with Everton in the 80s twice, back for a second spell, wasn't working out. They sacked him in December. The caretaker manager had lost, I think, 5 of the 6 games that followed, and they took Walker from Norwich to become their manager. He lasted 9 months. I think from
that's
when he took over, I think they won 3 league games in January to the end of the season. They went on an incredible run until the final day of the season. I think in their 9 games before that, Tony Cottee was the only player that had scored for them, and he'd only scored like 3. They were in free fall and basically dropped into the relegation zone in the penultimate game of the season. In that final game of the season, they were 2-0 down at home to Wimbledon. God, this has come full circle, wasn't it? And won 3-2 in no suspicious circumstances whatsoever. But everyone can feel free to Google Hans Sagers. With Everton bottom of the league going into the next season in October, they appointed Joe Royle, legendary former player of the club, who took over. The term the Dogs of War in terms of the battle you'd face against Everton was formed. Everton stayed up that year and also won the FA Cup. En route to that, they played Norwich City at home in the 5th round and they beat Norwich 5-0.
oh, payback.
Norwich went down.
Bloody hell. What an
That's
eventful 2 years.
that's on this day from 1993. Effin at Coco and Norwich winning 5-1 at Everton.
That is my favorite one so far. I loved that. Yeah, I love a little history lesson.
Good, that, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah,
I know.
enjoyed that one.
Just say as well, I've had a little bit of feedback on this stage that there's a bit too much Manchester United. That's fair enough, but Manchester United have been quite historic in the Premier League, and I think people have been upset that there's been good Manchester United. Don't worry, I'm gonna find some bad ones of Manchester United in future weeks.
Yeah, and can you chuck in a nice Arsenal one, please?
No, I've at some point, yeah, some
I
point.
thought you'd say that. Lovely stuff. Enjoyed that. What's on the menu for the rest of the week?
So we was potentially going to cover it today, but you voted for us not to because we're going to cover it in more detail tomorrow. Is too much football being played on the People's Poll tomorrow, essentially? It was in the news massively last week. It's in the news even more this week because the player that was most outspoken about it last week is possibly missing the rest of the football season, and that's obviously Rodri. I think this leads off into a lot of conversations. The potential for strike. I genuinely think it's something that needs to be discussed. What's going to happen with his Club World Cup at the end of the year? Because it's quite clear that literally nobody wants it other than FIFA. So a lot to discuss on that, which we will do tomorrow.
Lovely. And on Patreon this week?
Surge is with me today in the studio for a bit of Tottenham because West Ham weren't shit on Saturday, were they? We'll be
He
discussing
even did
that.
a thread.
I was like, what, blind me? What's going on here? You tell he's bored, and he misses us,
He
really.
misses us.
We've also got on our Money in Football podcast tomorrow, the battle for ownership of Chelsea. We'll have our game week 6 preview on Friday as well. If you want to support the show, it's www.patreon.com/Planet FPL.
Lovely stuff. James, anything else before we get out of here?
No, cheers, Clates. Be nice to each other, everyone. And cue music, please, man child.